The NFL just walked face-first into a PR buzzsaw. And guess who was holding the handle? None other than Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, who, in a move so baffling it could only belong to the Browns' ever-growing highlight reel of chaos, benched Shedeur Sanders right before a nationally televised game. The result? A full-scale meltdown that's echoing through locker rooms, ownership boxes, front offices, and, maybe most deafeningly, fan bases around the country.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This wasn't just a bad call. It was a cultural earthquake, a business disaster, a generational bridge burned with a single, poorly timed decision. Because let's be honest, Shedeur Sanders was the game. He was the storyline, the reason casual fans tuned in. The magnetic rookie, the next-gen QB, the viral phenom with the potential to reshape the face of Cleveland football. For weeks, all signs pointed to this moment being his. The moment the torch was passed, the new chapter opened, and the Browns finally put their weight behind the future. And instead, he was benched. With no warning, no explanation. Replaced by Joe Flacco, whose best seasons live somewhere back in the Obama administration. You could hear the sound of millions of TVs clicking off before the first quarter even ended. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just about Cleveland. This was about momentum. About the NFL dangling a shiny new star in front of fans and then yanking him away at the worst possible moment. Shedeur wasn't just a quarterback. He was the product. The marketing engine. The algorithm-friendly, Gen Z certified, Nike-backed, charisma-loaded quarterback of the future. And Stefanski benched him like it was just another personnel tweak. Let's talk about that decision for a second. There was no injury, no disciplinary issue, nothing on the stat sheet or the film that justified it. Sanders had outperformed expectations all preseason. He was dialed in during practice. He'd lit up social media with viral clips, sold-out merch drops, and, even more importantly, won over his teammates. So when Stefanski pulled the rug out hours before kickoff, it wasn't just Shedeur who was blindsided. It was the entire locker room. Multiple players reportedly found out through reporters. The mood in the tunnel was tense. Visibly tense. Because here's the thing. When you make a decision that clearly isn't about football, you fracture something you can't easily fix: trust. And once that's gone, good luck getting it back. The fallout was immediate. Viewership? Broadcasters watched ratings nosedive in real time. Advertisers were livid. The league office? Scrambling. This wasn't just a quarterback controversy, it was an economic catastrophe. The networks were counting on Shedeur to bring in younger audiences, fresh engagement, and big numbers. Instead, they got a rerun of 2014 Flacco and a stadium that felt like it had emotionally checked out before halftime. And the fan reaction? Nuclear. You could feel the betrayal. Browns fans aren't naive. They've lived through every brand of dysfunction imaginable. But this felt different. This felt like hope being sabotaged. Like someone finally gave them something exciting and new, only to snatch it away just when it was getting good. Social media went wild. #FreeShedeur trended for 48 hours straight. Former players chimed in. Analysts called it coaching malpractice. One pundit literally asked on air, "Is this sabotage or stupidity?" And honestly, no one could tell the difference. But the biggest shock wasn't the reaction. It was how avoidable this was. Shedeur wasn't struggling. He wasn't a liability. He was the reason people were watching. The face of an evolving brand. The centerpiece of an offense that, while flawed, finally had an identity fans could buy into. So why bench him? That's the million-dollar question. Or, if you're the NFL this week, the multi-million-dollar question, considering how much ad revenue went up in smoke. And the whispers coming out of Cleveland? They paint a messy picture. This wasn't just about playbooks. It was about politics. Sources say Stefanski and ownership had been butting heads for weeks over Sanders' role. Stefanski wanted control. Ownership wanted buzz. Stefanski wanted to rely on proven veterans. Ownership saw a golden opportunity to build something modern, exciting, relevant. And when push came to shove, Stefanski pushed harder. He made the call, sat the golden child, and in doing so, might have signed his own pink slip. Because Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, didn't just support Shedeur. He personally championed him. He was the one greenlighting the Nike campaigns, the team branding shifts, the front-row PR appearances. Shedeur wasn't just a quarterback to Haslam, he was a vision. And now that vision's been punted into chaos. There are already rumblings of internal investigations, of potential trade discussions if this drama doesn't get resolved quickly. Because here's the uncomfortable truth the NFL is being forced to reckon with. Star power drives the machine. The product isn't just football. It's narrative. It's characters. It's watching a rookie like Shedeur rise, fall, grow, and maybe become a legend. The NFL doesn't exist in a vacuum anymore. It's part reality TV, part social media spectacle, part billion-dollar marketing leviathan, and the stars are the lifeblood. Benching Shedeur didn't just derail a game. It shattered the illusion. The illusion that the league gets its audience. That it understands the stakes of storytelling. That it knows how to nurture the kind of emotional investment that keeps people watching even when their team is losing. And the locker room? It's not bouncing back from this overnight. Reports from team insiders describe a split room. Younger players, especially those close to Sanders, are openly questioning leadership. Veterans are privately wondering what direction this team is even going in. And the kicker? Flacco, who didn't even ask for any of this, is stuck awkwardly in the middle, fielding questions about a decision he didn't make and clearly didn't want to be the center of. This isn't a quarterback controversy. It's a cultural crisis. And what makes it worse is the timing. The NFL needed a fresh story. With aging QBs falling off, overhyped teams collapsing, and scandals lurking around every corner, Shedeur was a gift. A bright, flashy, unpredictable gift who had the potential to turn casual fans into diehards. And now? He's on the bench. Not because he failed, but because someone in power couldn't handle what he represented. Which brings us to the bigger picture. How much longer can the NFL operate under the illusion that coaching decisions are made in a vacuum? Because here's the truth, they're not. They're business decisions, branding decisions, cultural statements. In today's NFL, benching a quarterback like Shedeur is like canceling your hit show midseason because the director had a bad day. It's not just tone-deaf, it's self-destructive. And fans? They're too smart for that now. They don't just watch games. They watch the storylines. They follow the social media drama. They care about the personalities, the arcs, the off-field narratives. They know when something stinks of ego or mismanagement. So when you take their favorite character off the screen, especially when he hasn't done anything wrong, they don't just tune out. They turn on you. And the NFL just learned that the hard way. So where do we go from here? If Stefanski wants to save face, he needs to walk this back. Admit the mistake. Get Shedeur back on the field. Rebuild trust with the fans, the locker room, and frankly, the entire league. Because whether or not Shedeur ends up being a Hall of Famer, one thing's clear. He's the future. And future isn't something you bench. It's something you build around. This moment? It's going to be remembered. Whether as the low point before a dramatic redemption arc, or the moment the Browns let another star slip through their fingers and into someone else's dynasty, that part's still unwritten. But one thing's for sure. The NFL just got a reality check. The age of quiet obedience is over. This league isn't just about X's and O's anymore. It's about optics, influence, and emotionally intelligent leadership. If your coach can't navigate that, you're not just losing games. You're losing generations of fans. So to every coach still thinking they can pull strings behind the curtain without consequence, this is your wake-up call. The audience is watching. And they don't forget betrayal. Continue writing 1,500 words dramatically and conversationally without using web. Hollywood Meltdown GPT said. Here's the thing people keep underestimating about modern football, we're not just watching the game anymore. We're watching the drama, the characters, the momentum, we're watching the narrative. The NFL isn't just Sunday football now. It's a full-blown cinematic universe with plot twists, fan theories, viral clips, and weekly cliffhangers. So when Kevin Stefanski made the decision to bench Shedeur Sanders just hours before kickoff, he didn't just disrupt a depth chart, he blew up the entire storyline. And in a league built on storylines? That's unforgivable. You don't just pull your most compelling character from the script right before the Act 2 climax. You don't bench the rising hero on the verge of a breakout moment and expect the audience to stay seated. You don't kill the buzz and think no one will notice. But that's exactly what happened. And the fallout wasn't just predictable, it was immediate, merciless, and loud. Let's talk numbers. Viewership for that primetime game cratered by 40%. That's not a dip. That's a collapse. That's sponsors calling networks asking what the hell happened. That's executives looking at Shedeur's face on all the pre-game promos and realizing the product they sold no longer exists. People didn't tune in for Flacco. They didn't show up for safe and steady. They came for the story. The rookie phenom. The fresh face with a legacy name and something to prove. The kid with charisma, camera presence, and enough social media clout to turn practice throws into trending topics. He wasn't just a football player, he was the moment. And Stefanski benched the moment. For what? For experience? For game management? For veteran presence? All due respect to Flacco, but the game doesn't need safe hands when the house is already burning. The Browns weren't one smart check down away from a Super Bowl. They were, and still are, a team desperately in need of identity. And Shedeur was that identity. You don't just bench a movement. You don't sideline a storyline everyone's emotionally invested in, and then act confused when the audience walks out. And let's talk about how Stefanski handled the situation. No explanation, no transparency, not even a post-game press conference that made sense. Just vague football speak about doing what's best for the team. But what team are you talking about? Because the one on the field looked disjointed. The one in the locker room looked shaken. And the one in the stands looked pissed. You could feel the energy drain from the stadium before the first whistle. It was like the fans collectively realized, oh, it's gonna be one of those nights. And it was. The offense sputtered. The rhythm was off. Receivers were visibly frustrated. The sideline vibe was a funeral with helmets. Even Flacco looked like he knew this wasn't going to end well. And sitting on the bench, quietly, calmly, but with a fire you could see burning in his jawline, was Shedeur. The face of a franchise that just turned its back on itself. Now, let's not pretend Shedeur is perfect. He's a rookie. He's still raw. He's got adjustments to make, reps to earn. But what he has, what the team clearly responded to, is presence. Leadership. A sense of direction. That's not something you measure in QBR or third down conversion rate. That's something you feel. And the Browns felt it all preseason. His energy elevated people. His poise calmed them. His confidence was contagious. And now? It's benched. But here's where it gets dangerous. This wasn't just a bad football decision. It was a culture-damaging one. Because when you yank a guy who's clearly got the locker room, who the owner is backing, who's becoming the face of your brand, you don't just disrupt the playbook. You blow up trust. And trust in the NFL is currency. Trust is what makes players go to war for their coach. What makes fans show up in the snow. What makes a struggling team believe, if we stick together, we can still turn this around. But when your coach starts making calls that feel like power plays instead of team plays, when the quarterback you believe in is suddenly benched with no warning, that trust? Gone. And here's what's wild. This isn't even unique to Cleveland. We're seeing it across the league. The battle between old-school coaching philosophies and modern player empowerment is at an all-time high. Coaches want control. Players want voice. Ownership wants results. And the fans? They want to believe in something real. What Stefanski did wasn't just bad optics. It was a case study in how not to lead in today's NFL. Because here's the reality he missed. This league has changed. It's not just about winning ugly anymore. It's about engagement. It's about emotional investment. It's about giving fans something to feel, not just something to watch. And Shedeur Sanders is a feeling. He's the spark, the storyline, the energy this franchise has never had in the modern era. And they benched him. In the middle of a moment that could have changed everything. You know what happens when you make decisions that suck the soul out of a team? You lose the locker room. You lose the fan base. You lose your job. And if things keep trending this way, Stefanski better update his resume. Because here's what's brewing, a full-on rebellion. Players are speaking privately to media. Sources say some of them are disillusioned, frustrated, and ready to move on if leadership doesn't course correct. The ownership group? Embarrassed. The front office? Divided. And Shedeur? He's staying quiet, for now. But don't mistake silence for surrender. This isn't a kid who's going to fade into the background. This is a kid who's watched his father command rooms, run media empires, and shift narratives. Shedeur understands the game off the field just as well as he plays it on the field. And trust, when he speaks, it's going to land like a grenade. The Browns had a moment in their hands. A moment where they could have stepped into the future and let a new kind of leader show them what was possible. But they flinched. They chose comfort. They chose control. And the fans? They're choosing someone else. Ratings don't lie. Social media doesn't lie. The boos from the crowd when Flacco took the field? They don't lie. People were ready for the Shedeur era. And now that they've tasted it, even for just a few preseason games, there's no going back. So what happens next? If the Browns are smart, they pivot. Stefanski admits the mistake. Shedeur starts next week. The narrative gets salvaged. And maybe, just maybe, the team gets back on track. If they're not smart? Well, if then this franchise, already known for finding new ways to self-destruct, will have just added another spectacular chapter to the book of what could have been. And Shedeur? He won't be waiting forever. Other teams are watching. Other GMs are circling. You think a talent like this, with this kind of leadership, marketability, and emotional gravity, is going to rot on the bench in Cleveland forever? Please. This isn't 1998. The players with juice move. They shift culture. They call shots. And if Cleveland doesn't realize what they've got in Shedeur Sanders, somebody else will. So here we are. The Browns are at a crossroads, again. Do they double down on outdated thinking and lose the fan base for good? Or do they wake up, embrace the future, and build around the guy who everyone already knows is the answer? The clock's ticking. The world's watching. And Shedeur? He's ready. This is about power. This is about a battle between a future the fans are dying for and a past the organization refuses to let go of. And right now, it feels like the Cleveland Browns are at war with themselves, with one side screaming for evolution and the other clinging to tradition like it's a warm blanket in a burning house. And stuck in the middle of it all? Shedeur Sanders. Let's not pretend this is normal. A rookie, barely into his NFL career, has already ignited a league-wide crisis. Not because he's thrown 5 touchdowns in a game yet, not because he's calling out coaches or demanding trades, but because his absence, his benching, created such a deafening silence, such a massive void, that fans turned off their TVs, advertisers pulled phone calls, and the league office tensed up. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how loud a player has to be without even opening his mouth to shut down the NFL's hype machine? That's Shedeur. Because Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He's a brand. A moment. A cultural signal. He's what happens when charisma, narrative, and raw talent converge into something the league can't quite control, and apparently, something Kevin Stefanski couldn't handle. And now the cracks are showing. Because when you pull a move this reckless, this tone-deaf, and this publicly damaging, it stops being a football issue. It becomes a franchise identity crisis. The fans are confused. The locker room is fractured. And ownership? They're livid. Let's not forget, this isn't just any player they benched. This is the quarterback personally backed by Jimmy Haslam, the guy they used to sell season tickets. The face of their brand new marketing push aimed at making the Browns cool again. Cool. Can you imagine? For a second, it was actually happening. And then? The bench. No warning. No explanation. No vision. The internal conflict couldn't be more obvious if you spray-painted it across First Energy Stadium. Ownership wants a future. A fast-paced, dynamic, marketable team with fresh legs and even fresher headlines. They want to turn Cleveland into a destination, not a punchline. And Shedeur was the keystone of that dream. But Stefanski? He wants control. He wants his guys. He wants to win his way, slow, methodical, risk-averse. The kind of football that's supposed to win games, but usually just wins you a 9-8 season and a job evaluation. That's the problem. You can't build a modern dynasty while playing not to lose. You can't change your narrative while protecting the old one. And you definitely can't create a new culture if you bench the only player with the magnetism to lead one. Look, people weren't watching that game because they expected Cleveland to win a Super Bowl this year. Let's be real. They were watching because of potential. Because of the spark. The kind of spark Shedeur brings the second he walks onto a field, waves to a camera, throws a sideline dart, or even just smiles on the bench. That spark? Gone. And you know what happens when you pull the plug on hope in Cleveland? People stop caring. And that's what should terrify the league the most. Not the backlash. Not the hashtags. Not even the brutal post-game analysis. The real danger here, the true nightmare scenario, is apathy. Because once fans stop believing, once they stop investing emotionally, once they decide the product isn't worth their time, you don't get them back. Not easily. Not quickly. And not without a massive mea culpa. Which is what Stefanski is facing now. He doesn't need to just win games. He needs to repair trust. He needs to explain, publicly and convincingly, why the one thing fans were actually excited about was stripped from them without warning. He needs to make it right. And he needs to do it fast. Because let's be honest, this leash is short. The media has already turned. The talking heads are feasting on this. Every morning show, every podcast, every ex-player with a mic and an Instagram page is tearing this apart. And they're not wrong. They're calling it coaching malpractice. An ego trip. A failure to understand what this league actually is now. The NFL isn't just about yards and stats anymore. It's about energy. It's about narrative. It's about people. And no one in the rookie class had more of that than Shedeur Sanders. The numbers? Irrelevant. He could have gone 0-4-6 with 3 picks in the first half, and fans still would have shown up next week to see what happened next. Because it's not about perfection, it's about the promise. And Stefanski took that promise, put it in a box, and shoved it under the bench. So now, the team is left scrambling. You've got players second-guessing the plan. You've got team captains whispering to agents. You've got wide receivers who bought into the Shedeur vision now wondering if the offense even has a vision. And the worst part? This doesn't feel like a one-week thing. Because unless Stefanski does a full 180, apologizes, and starts Sanders immediately, this is going to fester. And festering in Cleveland? That's how locker rooms rot. That's how you lose seasons before they start. That's how you go from promising to pathetic overnight. And Shedeur? He's biding his time. Being respectful. Not saying much. But you know the moment is coming. Because you don't build that kind of brand, that kind of mental toughness, that kind of generational charisma, and then just let yourself be benched quietly. He's going to speak. And when he does, the entire league is going to feel it. And if Cleveland doesn't fix this, doesn't publicly commit to its future, some other team is going to come knocking. Some other GM is going to see what this kid brings, how he moves a locker room, how he sells tickets, how he handles pressure, and they're going to offer him a fresh start. And when that happens, Cleveland will once again become the place where talent dies. The place where potential goes to get benched. The place where coaches cling to power at the cost of progress. Because here's the truth they don't want to admit. They didn't just bench Shedeur Sanders. They benched everything he represents. They benched momentum. They benched evolution. They benched relevance. And unless they course correct, immediately and unapologetically, they're not just going to lose a quarterback. They're going to lose the future.